Welcome back to another exciting and thrill-filled adventure with DIY Nautical Dream. Okay, maybe that was a little over the top. Anyways, we'll go ahead and get our next video started. Hi, I'm Rich.
I'm Priscilla.
And together we're DIY Nautical Dream.
Welcome back to another episode of DIY Nautical Dream. I'm Priscilla.
And I'm Rich.
Together
we make DIY Nautical Dream.
So this episode we're gonna review the CT54, and we travel all the way from Washington to Florida to the Bahamas and then all the way to Trinidad,
otherwise known as Port of Spain.
Okay, anyways, this boat, he have his heart like fall in love.
Yep.
He really likes this boat. He thinks we're gonna buy this one. This is the one, and we will see how this boat reviews gonna go after we look at it. So go ahead, honey.
Like she said, this is a CT54, and I'd like to take the time to introduce this boat. This boat is known as the Wind Wanderer. It's a 1983 CT54, and these are just a couple pictures of her back in her former glory. You can see how beautiful she is from the side view and how big and broad and beautiful she is from the stern with those four large port lights in the back. Very beautiful boat. And it's located in Trinidad. And the backstory on this is I found it online, and I'd been watching this boat for a while, and I watched the price continue to reduce lower and lower, and I'd been watching it for probably maybe about a year. And then I finally contacted the broker who put me in touch with the owner, and the owner and I started talking back and forth, and we probably talked for I'd say a couple months. Throughout that time we kind of developed some kind of a acquaintance. I wouldn't really say a friendship, but maybe more of an acquaintance. And I followed his story. They had posted a story online. Him and his fiance, I think, at the time, bought this boat, and so I followed him from the very beginning all the way up until the time they brought this boat back to Trinidad and put it on the hard. So if you take a look at the map here on the screen, you'll see the red circle. That's where Trinidad and Tobago is located, which is also where the Boatyard Power Boats is at, and that's where the CT54 was put on the hard at the end of their journey. So we traveled all the way from Seattle to Florida to look at the previous boats, and then from there we traveled to Bahamas and then onward to Trinidad to view the CT54. The marina and boatyard where they stored the boat at is called Power Boats. But one of the reasons why people like to select this marina and boatyard is because it's out of the hurricane path, and so it rarely ever gets hit by hurricanes. And so that's the reason why they stored this CT54 there, is because they were planning to protect it from hurricane season. So I knew all the modifications, I knew all the ups and downs, I knew everything that was good and bad with this boat, all the problems they had, all the successes they had, and how much fun they had with it as well. And they circumnavigated with this boat. Like I said, over the time, him and I had talked, and we kind of came to an agreement on a price, which was fair for both of us, because we still had to have money, we had to have budget left over to bring it home. We weren't sure how that was all going to work out yet. If we were going to do it, or if we were going to hire a captain, or a combination of something. We talked several times about the condition of this boat, and that was a very key factor, because we wanted to make sure if we bought this boat, if we would be able to get it through the Panama Canal, because we of course will have to bring it home, and we're on the west coast and this boat is down in Trinidad, so it has to go through the Panama Canal to come back home. And that's key, because to get through the Panama Canal you have to maintain a minimum speed to get through there, or they will fine you for delaying. And so we talked about it. He'd already been through the Panama Canal with this boat. It's already been measured, the measurement's been certified, on and on. So he was totally confident this boat would maintain and exceed the minimum speed going through the Panama Canal. So we were good on that. So we go ahead and we get there, we fly in, and we hired a driver to pick us up at the airport, and the driver takes us into the marina because we're actually staying at a guest apartment in the marina that is the owner helped hook us up with. So we actually didn't even have to pay for a hotel. We just stayed in a guest apartment at the marina, and so that was cool. So they bring us in there, and it's nighttime when we get there, and so I'm looking at all the boats as we're coming in, trying to get a look to see if we can find the boat, and we found it. So as we were pulling into the boatyard that evening, this is the first sights we saw of the Wind Wanderer, the CT-54, here at Power Boats Marina and Boatyard. And as you can see, it's evening. It doesn't look the best, but it is a big, tall ship, and it's got beautiful lines. It's a beautiful looking boat, even though it's kind of on the rugged side. And I was like really excited to see it. Couldn't wait till the next day to where we could actually meet with the broker and get on board the boat and really get a good look at it. Next morning comes in, we meet with the broker, and the broker, he's a really cool guy. So we hit it off pretty well. We talked and we got down to business and started getting ready to climb on board the boat. So since it's already out of the water on the hard, the first thing we want to do is look at the hull, since it's already there. And we start looking over the hull. This thing's got a lot of rust streaks on the hull. So one of the first things we noticed as we got closer to this boat when we were walking up to it, this thing just kept getting bigger and bigger as we got closer and closer. It's just a really big boat. When it's sitting out of the water, it's even bigger looking. So you can see the size of it with me and baby standing underneath it. It kind of makes us look small. But yeah, it's a beautiful boat. It's got great lines to it, but she's had some bad days. She's looking really rough and very neglected at this point. And it looks like it's done some battle. It's alright. Bottom paint definitely needs to be done on it. Zincs would need to be replaced. Some of the through hole fittings look like they could use replacing, or at least taking a look at them. We go ahead and climb up on the boat, climb up the ladder and get up on deck. This boat's been sitting a while, and it's been sitting a long while. It's been sitting years down there on the hard. I mean, we're talking years. And so it's been exposed to all the extremes the whole time. And what it looked like in the ad pictures and what it looked like when we saw it wasn't exactly the same.
It's opposite.
Yeah, pretty rough condition on the outside. So, and which is kind of disappointing because I remember all the time and all the money they put into fixing this boat and shining it up and having furniture made for it in foreign countries and on and on. They love this boat, and I felt. So here's a view of the aft deck bench seating area and table they had made, and I think this was made in South Africa, and wow, it's so beautiful. And then here's what it looked like when we saw it. Huge change. I fell in love with this boat. I fell in love with the story. I did the one thing we shouldn't do, and I got emotionally attached to this boat before we even saw it. We're looking around in the cockpit area, and it's definitely needs updating. The electronics and everything is old, So here's a couple pictures inside the cockpit area, the main seating area. Here's the helm wheel and the helm control panel, and then you can see how roomy this cockpit is. It's got an area to sleep off to the side here, like a day bed while you're under sail. You could be sleeping up there when you're off watch, and then the enclosure is just really solid. It's very nice design. I really like it. And then here's the aft view as well, so it's really well protected. It's just, you know, it's gone to weather so bad that it needs to be all pretty much redone. But it's all right. It'll work for what we need to do. We just want to get this thing home so we can get working on it, right? So we go down the companionway stairs and we go down to the inside. Once we get inside, we realize that's where the story didn't match up with what we had been talking about. We could see the floorboard was up, the engine was exposed, and everywhere you could see there was rust. Everywhere you could see on that engine there was rust. Not only that, the head was off of the engine. There was, looked like they put transmission fluid in all the cylinders. The engine was frozen, wouldn't turn over, was not able to run. So the broker told me that they had some problems with turning over the engine, and decided to pull the head off and inspect, and found that it was frozen. So as we make our way down the companionway stairs, first thing we see when we come in is the floorboard is lifted up and the engine is exposed. So we immediately take a look at that because this is not something we expected to see. So the top end of the engine's been torn off, removed the head, the freshwater cooling system, and the cylinders and pistons are exposed, as well as the underside of the cylinder head, which everything's got a nice layer of rust on it. The pistons appear to have some transmission fluid on top of them to prevent them from re-seizing back into place, but this is a huge disappointment. We did not expect this at all. And then if you take a look at the last couple pictures, you'll see what the bilge area looks like down there, and that's all the equipment, fuel filter valves, the fuel tank trucker straps holding them down. These are all things we did not anticipate seeing. This is a huge setback for us. So that's a big story right there, because we had been talking these last couple months about how this boat would clearly make it through the Panama Canal. So right there is a big problem. That is not what we had talked about. That is not what we understood. Now we already have a huge discrepancy in place. Not only that, can we see inside the bilge area, we can see the fuel tanks are strapped down with trucker straps because it looks like the fuel tanks had come loose. Everything under there has been rusted because this boat was knocked down twice when they were in the Atlantic, I believe, and they took on a lot of water, and they'd almost lost the boat twice in a storm. So I knew that, but I didn't realize they didn't flush out the bilges and let everything rust to pieces under there. So, and I already knew that there was a problem with the transmission because I remember him telling me about it and reading about it in his logs of they always had problems with the transmission leaking fluid. So I already knew that, and so him and I discussed that. The owner and I discussed that about the transmission. We understood that. So here's a couple of views of the marine transmission that's attached to the engine that we were talking about. So what's going on with the transmission here is the main shaft seal leaks. I think it's the forward one on the bell housing end. And anyways, it leaks, and so it doesn't hold fluid in it for very long, and so it really limited their ability to motor for any kind of a great length of time. And so they had to carry lots of extra fluid with them on long passages and just use it minimally. So I knew about that, and they had it rebuilt a couple of times, and it just wasn't getting fixed properly. I think there was probably some rough edges on the shaft where it went through the main seal or something. Anyways, here's another shot at one of those trucker straps we were talking about. These are being used to hold the fuel tanks in place. With the amount of rust on those, you can tell the straps are probably not in any good quality condition as well. Likely would need a rebuild, or we would need to bring a lot of fluid, or only use it in coming in and out of port, and otherwise we're under sail most of the time unless we're going through the Panama Canal where we need to be under motor all the time. Those are things that can be fixed. So I'm like, I just put that in the back of my mind for now, and I am not happy about it at all. I wish we would have known that in advance, because I mean, we booked a flight. We traveled to a country we'd never even been to before. We went to Trinidad just for this boat. But I will say that once we got there, we actually liked it there, and it was a nice place, and people were really friendly, and there's a lot of beautiful things to see there. So it's not a bad place to go. We'd probably go back there. But anyway, so we get in and start looking around the main salon of the boat. The one thing that really rings out huge is they abandoned this boat. Not only did they abandon it, they left everything behind. All their personal effects, all their family photos, their clothes, the food and beverages and everything that was in the refrigerator when they left, it was still in there. So when you open up the refrigerator and look in there, you would get a big surprise. Seriously. So one of the first things we noticed once we got done looking at the engine in the main salon area was just boxes and boxes and bins of personal effects all throughout the area. And this is their personal items, clothing, pictures, family photo albums, all kinds of personal things in there. And it's just kind of left us with a sad feeling knowing that they just abandoned this boat. It must have been a horrible experience, whatever they went through. The staircase on these CT-54s, as you may have heard me talk in the other video when we saw the other CT54, the staircase on these is beautiful, and this one was still very beautiful. The interior. Here you can see a picture of the staircase, or the companionway stairs coming into the main salon area of the boat. It's still really in great shape. The wood floor around it is also in really good shape, so that was a big plus. The interior woodwork in this boat was beautiful. There was a lot of really good in this boat still. It's just that, you know, when you present a boat to sell, there's a lot of different ways you can make that first impression. There was zero effort put into making an impression on this boat. And so, yeah, his price was reflecting that as well. But it just really sets you back when your expectation is one way, and then when you actually see it in reality, it's anything close to what we dreamed or talked about or imagined. And it was all the wrong ways. So, but you have to, when you're looking at a project boat, and we're clearly shopping for a project boat, so you have to have your mindset that, hey, we're gonna have some things we got to fix, right? And the engine is definitely within my skills. I can totally rebuild that engine. I can do whatever is necessary to be done, but we're in a foreign country. This boat's in a very expensive working yard in Trinidad, so in order to do all these things, it's going to cost some money. So we would want to just do the bare minimum to get this boat seaworthy, to get it out of there and put off most projects till it got home. There was evidence of where this boat had taken on water on the floorboards, on the lower portions of the bulkheads. Wasn't rotted, but you could see staining. None of that was cleaned up. Here's a few examples of where the water had been on the floors. Probably been sitting in there for a while. It might have happened when they got knocked down a couple of times. It might have been from sitting in storage or whatever, but you can see the wood is, the damage has happened. I don't know if all this will clean up. I don't know if it can sand down and be brought back or saved, or if some of this has to be just removed and replaced. But yeah, it's just too bad because the surrounding teak is still really beautiful. So the best thing they could have done was flush everything with water, fresh water, right after they got into port, before they put the boat on the hard. Flush everything out so it doesn't rust, preserve it, run the engine, things like that. But they just looked like they abandoned it. The bathroom had these Mexican hand-painted sinks installed, hand tiles, blue tiles laid all over the place. Here's a couple of views of those sinks that I was talking about. These are hand-painted sinks ordered from Mexico, and there was actually 3 different ones in this boat. And this boat had 2 pretty good-sized bathrooms on it. But you can just see these are really beautiful, and they really love this boat. They put a lot of time and hand laid those tiles and the sinks, and then one of them got broken at some point. But yeah, you can still order these online. I've actually researched it and found them online, and all different kinds of patterns you can order, but they're all really beautiful. This boat at one time was a beautiful, beautiful boat, and so that was what I wanted to bring back. If we bought this boat, I wanted to bring it back to the beauty it was when they had it, or even better. You know, we worked our way back towards the aft cabin, and I remember seeing pictures of the aft cabin online. I remember seeing pictures on his postings about the aft cabin. Well, here's a couple pictures of the aft master cabin of the description we were expecting to see, and yeah, you can just tell this was a beautiful aft cabin, master stateroom. Very large and roomy. Still not a fan of that style bed, and preferably we wouldn't have a couch taking up half of the space in the master cabin, but rather see a center walk-around, partial walk-around queen-size bed there in the middle. But yeah, you can see all the teak strips and the 4 windows in the aft bulkhead there on the transom. Man, this was a beautiful thing, and this is kind of what we were hoping to see. It was completely opposite. Water had been dripping in there. It rotted holes in the bedding. The teak slats that were in the interior, on the sidewalls, on the headliner, all that stuff is fallen down, and you can tell. So here's several different pictures of the aft master cabin. The total damage done to it, and water staining. Headliners are damaged. The headliner panels. All the bedding, the mattresses, the cushions, all that stuff's damaged and garbage. You can see the windows in the aft bulkhead still look like they're in good shape, but yeah, the headliners are shot. And knowing what I know now, a lot of this isn't as bad as it looks, but it's still going to require a lot of work. All that water that's been running down the bulkhead there in that one view, I mean, we don't know what it did to the bulkhead, so we'd have to definitely investigate. But this is one of the prime examples of why they call them leaky tikis, because the teak decks up above are what's causing all this water to leak down below. So that just tells you the condition of the upper decks of the boat as well. They're gonna need some looking into as well. And you can tell water has been running down the sides in there on a continuous, regular basis. Here's a couple more views from the aft cabin. You can see the overhead panels. Those are actually not that hard to replace, knowing what I know now, but at that time I was we were both pretty much in shock just seeing all this because we didn't expect it. You can see the aft cabin is really big. It's very roomy, which I can imagine is really beautiful when it's done right. All their clothes are still left in the closets. It's sad to see that they just ditched this boat and left. But yeah, and then there's more views of the cushion on the couch, which I don't understand why there's a couch in the back master bedroom, but there is. This is a true leaky tiki, still very leaky. All the interior has to be rebuilt, recleaned, rebedded. It has that beautiful stall shower in there in the master bathroom. Here's a couple views of the master bathroom in the aft cabin. Look at that nice stall shower. That's pretty cool. You don't see that on many boats. And then here's a pretty good sized sink wash basin area. And then the head. So yeah, it's got a normal toilet on it too, which is nice. But yeah, pretty roomy bathroom for a boat. The boat has a ton of potential, but it's not anywhere near what was described before we had come down there. This is another one of those hard lessons learned. This was a heartbreak because
you're already emotionally attached before you even
see it.
it.
No, we were there was no question about it. We were buying this boat. It was just a matter of confirming what he said was what it was, or very close to it, within some kind of universe of distance, but it was so far apart it was not even close to what he had discussed with me. I took a lot of pictures, made a lot of mental notes, kind of prioritize how we do things, still trying to get my head around the engine and everything that I saw in the bilge area, all the wiring, everything had been subjected to salt water. It was kind of a lot more than I expected. Here's a few more views of the bilge area. You can see all the hoses that run down in there, and this is a deep bilge, so these are going to be hard to reach, and you can tell by looking at them they're not coming out easy. So yeah, it's just, a lot of saltwater damage. So this is a lesson learned. If it ever happens, make sure you rinse it out, because otherwise it can turn into something like this down the road. But anyway, so we continued looking through the aft cabin. We were very disappointed with that. It's all fixable, but it was in a far worse condition than we imagined. All the hoses in the bilge are going to need to be replaced. All the through-hole fittings are going to need to be replaced. Your steering cables, your control linkage, ball valve fittings. The drive shaft bearing was frozen up. So here's a look at the drive shaft bearing. This drive shaft comes off the back of the transmission and goes out through the hull and through cutlass bearing to the propeller. So yeah, this bearing is very key. That shaft is not turning, and if it does, it's not going to turn for long without smoking that bearing. But yeah, that's got to be replaced before this thing can even go underway. On and on and on. I mean, this was a huge, extensive list of items that were going to need to be repaired. I don't know if the top end of the engine is salvageable or not, because they took it apart, didn't spray it down with any oil or anything, so it looks like it already had surface rust on it, which was a huge disappointment. It's not the way to... Here's a couple pictures of the upper head assembly components. Got the rocker arm assembly just sitting there in the valve cover, open to the air, rusting, corroding. You got the head sitting there in the bilge, rusting and corroding. And, we don't even know if the head's any good. It'd probably have to be pressure tested at the very least before it would go back together. It's not the way to preserve it, but whatever. So we continue looking through the main salon. Look, here's another shot of those great companionway stairs coming into the main salon area. Those are so beautiful. If you look to either side of the companionway stairs, you'll see two doorways. One doorway leads to the aft master bedroom area, and the other doorway leads to a quarter berth or a bunk bed area, which they've turned into a workshop and spares storage room. So that's kind of nice to have, very handy on a boat, especially if you're going over ocean crossings, etc. And then the main salon itself is really nice, very wide, open, lots of seating room across on both sides, and just lots of room in there. And it's got a lot of teak wood all throughout. It's very beautiful. It's aged interior because it's been sitting for so long, but yeah, it's really nice. It has the open skylight. Those are the butterfly hatches that are up on deck. They let a lot of light in, which is really nice. Those are very attractive when you're looking at those, and they're all nice and fixed up. And then it looks like there's a nav station off to the other side there, which is kind of nice. I'm not sure what that green box is. That looks like a really old piece of equipment. I'm not sure if that's still even operational, but it's got a nice desk for the nav station area, which is cool. And then here's the breaker control panel, also located in the main salon area. And we have some engine control monitoring gauges as well, so it's nice to have those ready and able to see. And then we have the doorway, the teak door there that leads to the forward cabin area, the V-berth, the forward head. You know, it was all right. It has that really nice U-shaped, horseshoe-shaped galley. The galley was really nice. Everything was wired for European voltage, so that was kind of... The galley on this boat is one of the main attractions for sure. It's very beautiful. It's a U-shaped galley. That's kind of our favorite. If we had to pick one, that would be our favorite type of galley. You know, and that's part of this boat that's still very, very appealing. The galley and all the teak woodwork throughout the galley. The stove had a little bit of damage on the handle, but you know, like I said, they left the boat in a hurry. Dishes, knives, everything was still in there. Looks like the electrical socket had fallen out or was taken out for some kind of troubleshooting at one point, but yeah, it was all wired for European AC voltage. The galley is, as well as many other areas on this boat, was still very beautiful and in very good condition. So the control panel is very dated. It looks like everything's there. It looks like it's functional. So we would probably just run with it for now until we get the boat home, if we were to purchase. We worked our way up towards the forward cabin area. All their stuff is everywhere. Stuff is stored in bins and totes all over the place. Lots of personal clothing items. So that was kind of a weird thing. I wasn't expecting that, but you know. Moving forward to the V-berth area, it wasn't in as bad a shape as the aft master cabin was, but the V-berth was large enough that you could sleep 2 adults in there, and then there was 2 quarter berths off to the side on your way into the V-berth area. So, and plus there was a bathroom up there as well, and so, you know, you could sleep 4 adults in that forward section of the boat pretty well. Again, they left a lot of their personal belongings behind, and you know, it's just kind of sad to see all that stuff there. But as far as the headliner and the overall condition of the forward V-berth area, it was still in pretty good condition. There was some leaking here and there, but nothing nearly as bad as what was in the aft cabin. And then also here's a couple pictures of the forward head. So still pretty good size head for a boat, and you know, it's nice and functional. It doesn't look too bad. And so we're just like, wow, they just really they left. I mean, they left this boat in a hurry. Yeah, maybe they were planning on coming back. Maybe they hated it at the end of the journey. I have no idea, but they ended up leaving and going back to Sydney, Australia. So we had our work cut out for us in the interior of the boat alone. There was several years worth of work piling up just that we could see with our visual inspection. So yeah, we continued our walk through on the interior and made note and took lots of pictures of everything. And it has 2 very large bathrooms on it, which was nice. It has lots of sleeping quarters on it. That's what we're looking for. This boat is huge and spacious inside, no doubt about it. This is a true beautiful boat when it's back in its serviceable condition, but it needs a lot of love to get it back there. It has so as we finish up down below, before we head up to the upper deck to start looking around there, we'll just show a couple more beautiful spots in this boat. The hand-carved teak headliners above the doorways. Man, those are beautiful, and must have took a lot of time to carve those, but just really says beauty, right? It's very nice. Then a few more areas of concern was the main mast, where it came through from the upper deck, had cracks around its wood trim there, so I don't know if the mast had been moving around or if the wood just cracked from water coming down and getting it wet and swelling. I'm not sure. And then at the base of the mast as well, the bolts that are holding the mast base down are really rusted, so that's all kind of stuff there I'd want to be looking at. And then a couple areas where the above decks are leaking down through on the bulkheads there and leaving rust streaks. That'd be areas of concern as well. So yeah, she's a leaky teaky for sure. And then we even have a little bit of rotted teak here on one of the door access, like a cubby door. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and start heading up deck here and taking a look, see what's going on up there. The teak decks on this boat were past their prime, and they were lifting up in several areas, which that accounts for why there's so much moisture down below, because the decks are leaking like crazy. So starting out on the aft deck, you can see the teak decking on there is old. It's very weathered, and in actually some spots where we're stepping, it's actually lifting up or shifting around under our feet. And so each one of these little strips of teak is fastened through the deck with screws, and they leak. So when water gets underneath the teak, it finds its way into the screw holes and starts to leak, and eventually saturates the deck coring material, and then eventually finds its way inside the cabin. And you can see in the aft cabin underneath, it was dripping all over the bed and rotting the sheets and the bedding. So those leaks had been going on for a long time. And there's absolutely no easy way to fix this. You have to tear it up and open up the decking and replace the water saturated rotted coring, recore it, reglass it, put your surface back on, either non-skid or it's going to go back as a teak deck. But that's what you have to do. And it's even the same up on the bow, but not quite as bad, but the teak still needs to be replaced. So I would say all teak, even on the cabin tops, should be replaced on this boat, and everything's rebedded new. These sail bags that had the sails stowed away in them are all rotted through. So all the sails, most are, if not all of the sails, are trash. So yeah, most of the sails that were in the bags on deck are pretty much shot. I don't think they're any good. And I remember the owner saying that they got hit by a rogue wave, and some of the sails that were in bags got washed overboard and they weren't able to retrieve them. So, and no telling what the staysail looks like under that cover, because it's been sitting there for a long time. It'd have to be open to find out what's going on with that. So that's a big expense right there. All the running rigging, all the standing rigging, all the wire rigging, all the shrouds, everything needs to be replaced. Yeah, all the running rigging, ropes and lines, those have all been exposed to the elements for years, and those are guaranteed to be rotted. I would only use them as mouse lines to pull new lines up in their place. But then if you look at the turnbuckles on some of the wire shrouds and fittings, man, those are really rusted. Those all got to be replaced. I don't think I would trust any of that with anything. It all has rust on it. The chain plates where they come through the deck are rusting like crazy. So if you look here in these pictures, you'll see the chain plates where they come through the decking, and they've got rust streaks on them really bad. That is never a good sign. That is very dangerous, and those could break. They could be, if they're that bad above the deck where they transit through the decking, that's usually where they're even the worst. So below that plate, the corrosion is probably a lot more significant, and these are probably close to breaking if they were under any kind of a significant load. So yeah, you don't ever want to see this on a boat. The swedges on the cables on the rigging is rusted. Everything on the rigging has to be replaced. The way this boat is set up is it has a in-mast roller furling setup, which is really nice. It's very easy and convenient when they work well, but just knowing and reading from all of his stories and his logs of their passages, that thing jammed on those guys more often than not, and it always jammed when they were in a storm and they needed to pull some of the sail area back in, reel it in, and it would jam and they couldn't get the sail area reduced in time, and so that knocked them over one time, actually twice. They got knocked over, and when I mean knocked over, the boat went completely over onto its side, and ocean water started running into the interior and filling up the bilge, so that's why the bilge is all rusty. And so that happened to them twice because they couldn't reduce the sail area on the main sail. So here's a couple pictures of the in-mast furling system. The first picture we're looking at here, we're looking at the bottom of it, and that's where the main bearing is in the bottom. And so sometimes that bearing fails due to lack of maintenance or corrosion or whatever, and so that will cause it to seize or become really stiff to pull in or pull out, or it won't be coming out in an even pressure. And then sometimes what will happen is it may spin too fast and the sail will actually start to curl up inside the mast as it's trying to come out, and it can jam that way as well. And then some of the problems they had with this setup was the halyard at the top of the mainsail chafed and actually broke loose a couple of times, and so the sail started to slide down into the mast up at the top, and that was one of the situations that caused them to get knocked down because there was nothing they could do. They were in a storm and it blew them completely over on their side, and lots of water came inside the boat. So I would totally own one. I'm not trying to hate on them, but I'm just saying that they're something you have to stay up on the maintenance with. So that's kind of one of the downsides of an in-mast furling system. If it doesn't work right, it usually messes up when you need it to work the most, in the most extreme conditions. So really unfortunate, but they were lucky they didn't lose their lives or lose the boat in those situations. But so that's definitely something that would need a lot of attention to make sure it's fixed and perfected, to get that safe to where it's something that you can rely on in all conditions. Where we're at now, we're adding up all these big huge items that need replacement or maintenance on, and so now we're needing full rigging. The engine's gonna definitely need a top end rebuild on it. It looks like the freshwater cooling system on the engine is very questionable. The generators froze up. The decks need to be tore up, rebedded, recored, and resealed. All those right there are just very large expenses, and you can't do that work in Trinidad not without putting a lot of money into it. This boat also has a really large bowsprit on it, the dolphin viewing platform we call it, and this one is just, you can tell that it has the potential to be really beautiful again. But on our way up to take a look at the bowsprit or the dolphin viewing platform, we stopped and took a look at the windlass, the anchor winch, and that thing's pretty beefy. It looks like it can definitely get the job done. And then as we proceed to the bowsprit area, it's just like you can tell that back in the day this thing was just a thing of beauty. It looks really well put together, still looks very strong to this day, and yeah, it'd be just a lot of fun to hang out up front there sailing in warm tropical weather somewhere with the dolphins splashing up underneath and you're laying down on your stomach looking at them. Yep, that would be the way to go. This one needs a little bit of work to get back to that point. But everything on here has the potential. It's not a lost boat by any means. It has all the potential to come back and be brought back to its former glory again. It's just that logistically where it's at, that's why he's having a hard time selling this boat, because it's in Trinidad, and nobody in Trinidad is going to buy this boat. This boat's going to be bought by somebody else in a foreign country, yeah. And no matter who buys it, they have to bring it home somehow. That's our big issue. If this boat was in the U.S., in the condition it's in that we see it in right here, no question asked, we'd buy this boat in a heartbeat. No question asked. It's all work that we can do. We'd have to contract out like the rigging and stuff like that, because I'm not a rigger and you're not a rigger and we don't know how to do that. But a lot of the other stuff, the electrical, the mechanical, the plumbing, through-hole fittings, all that, we can do all that. So But it's going to take a lot of time, and this is a project for somebody that has a lot of time, has a lot of money, and a lot of passion to bring this boat back to its beautiful state again. It's not so far lost that it can't be brought back, but it's just where it's at logistically. It doesn't work. We had to get to that reality point where, how much do we offer for the boat? We already kind of settled on a price, and he was going to sell it to us for that price. All we had to do is basically say, yeah, we agree to it, and the boat would have been ours. We do the paperwork and figure out how we're going to get it back home. I couldn't keep the offer we had agreed upon because of the condition of the engine wasn't as advertised. He misled me on the state of the engine because we numerous times talked about how well it ran and is it seaworthy, can it run under its own power. Our offer I lowered by $5,000, and he said he couldn't do it, and so we had to walk away from this deal. And the very next morning they showed the boat to somebody else and they bought it. So they probably bought it for $5,000 or $10,000 more than we would have offered, and so we lost it for that. And it was really hard for me because I thought we were buying this boat. Mm-hmm. So this is a hard lesson learned. Again, online boat shopping and seeing the boat for the first time and looking at the pictures online and comparing it to reality when you get there, the two often are not the same. So if there's anybody that's thinking about doing this or in the process of doing this, consider that when you're online boat shopping.
It's not going to be the same.
It is not going to be the same. A lot of times it's a bait and switch. The pictures they have online are years ago when the boat was in serviceable or operating condition, or in a lot better shape, and this boat, the pictures that are online, did not represent what we saw. Just the aft cabin alone, those pictures that were online that we saw and I showed you and we talked about and dreamed about and planned about and on and on and on.
It's different.
Completely different. I wouldn't have laid down on that bed, let alone slept in it. Absolutely not.
I thought for sure it's a different boat.
Yeah. I knew the outside was a little rough just from sitting and the storms that they'd been through, because they went through some rough weather. And a lot of that damage that happened to the boat with the seawater in there could have been prevented if they could have reduced their main sail area. But because the in-mast furling system jammed, they ended up getting knocked down. And knocked down is where the boat is blown over onto its side, almost tipping over, but not going over all the way. It's a very strong boat, and being able to withstand conditions like that and right itself back up after taking on all that seawater and being able to still continue underway and make it to its final destination is a true testament to how strong these boats are and how reliable they are. Luckily, those other systems didn't fail, and they were able to bilge the water out and continue making way. But yeah, it's just really unfortunate because I just really thought we were buying this boat. So just, be really careful, guard yourself, and protect yourself against getting emotionally involved in these boats when you're shopping online, because more often than not, they are not going to look like they did when they took the pictures. Sometimes these boats are on the market for years, and once they go to a brokerage site, a lot of times there's no maintenance done on these boats after they go to the brokerage site. They just sit. The brokerage doesn't want to. They don't care. They don't want to put any money into this boat because they're not going to recover that money. So there's no maintenance done. A lot of times these things aren't even turned over, and that's what happened here. The engine froze up from sitting all those 5 or 6 years. I can't remember how long it was on the hard for, but it was on the hard for a long time. I mean, all their personal effects had been sitting in there that whole time. They never ever came back to the boat. It was too many bad experiences trying to get it to Trinidad through the knockdowns and the storms they went through and just all the crazy stuff they saw. And also that was due to the fact they couldn't run the motor because of the transmission, so they couldn't afford to go off course too far and be able to use the motor, so they had to sail through some of these storms where, had they been able to use the motor and the transmission was good, they would have been able to motor around some of these storms and still been able to make it to their destination, but they had to go through them. and so they face some really ugly situations. But yeah, it's too bad. It's a really beautiful boat, and you know, I still to this day kind of wish and wonder, what if, you know, should we have, could we have, would have been the right thing to do? And no, probably not, but the heart didn't say that. I really wanted to get this boat, so it was hard. It was a hard decision to make, but I knew when we were leaving it was the right choice, and the boat did sell.
Yeah, it's not for us.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be, but still, that didn't make it easy. So just really try hard as you can not to get emotionally attached to a boat until you actually are able to buy it, till it actually goes through, because there's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of things that happen, surveys, results of surveys. There's hidden damage that I'm sure we did not even see on this boat that could have, you know, put it even higher. There's rust all over on the outside of this hull. There's, you know, that we didn't even start even to look into what was going on with that. It's too bad. We have lots of pictures of it. We'll post with this review. The boat is massively huge. It's a full keel boat, and when it's out of the water and we're standing next to it, it's amazing how big this boat is. And the rudder is just enormous on this boat. It's one of So here's a couple pictures of the outside of the hull, just to give you an idea of the general condition of the hull. It's rough to say the least. A lot of this though is bottom paint, so it's hard to tell because the bottom paint can make it look really bad, but for sure all the zincs need to be replaced, all the anodes. They looks like there's a couple keel bolts up in the bow. I'm not sure if they're keel bolts or some kind of a strakelet or whatever, but anyways, there's rust up on the bow. There's rust on the side of the hull at the through hull fittings. The rudder looks like it's in pretty good shape. The propeller looks like it's in pretty good shape. The rudder on this thing is just massive, by the way. Underneath the aft transom looks all right. Like I said, a lot of this is probably just cosmetic, but you know, we didn't tap test or check the hull for blisters or anything like that. We never got that far into it. We were just focused on mainly the interior and the mechanical side. It's one of those someday boats. I mean, we still hope maybe one day we can still find one, and maybe someday down the road we'll be able to get one. But until then, we'll wrap this up. There wasn't anything positive that came out of this other than the fact that we got to see it. The other positive was we got to travel to a new foreign country that we hadn't had any plans on going to. And Trinidad is a beautiful country, and the people there are really friendly and really nice. And I would not have any problem going back there again someday. What did you think? Were you wanting to pull the trigger on this boat and buy it, or what?
No.
No? Not at all? Not even close?
I already told you.
Yeah.
After we see inside, and it was not the boat that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Online.
Yeah.
It's so different. So I was like, nope.
Yeah, it's really disappointing when that happens. You know, if he would have just been real with us, if he would have just told us everything, what to expect, we would have still went and looked at this boat. We would have went to it with a different mindset, and I would have been able to prepare for what I was going to see, and we probably still would have bought it. But I was almost like mad that didn't tell us what the real condition was. We didn't need to hear that the head was off at the very late stages of our travel, you know, seeing this boat. That's not when you bring that up.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's still part of our journey.
Oh yeah, it's definitely part of the journey. This is one of the dips and downs of our adventure that led us to the boat we eventually bought. And like we say, if it was easy, we wouldn't be doing it. We thought that coming up with the money to buy the boat was the hardest part, but actually that's not the hardest part. Finding the boat that's right for us
is the hard part.
That was the hardest part. So would this boat have worked for us? The layout was perfect. The size of this boat was great. The look of this boat would have been perfect. The style, the design. It's got an awesome dolphin viewing platform. The windows in the transom. It's a very romantic boat if it was in good shape.
Yeah, but not too bad. But I would have been okay with it. I'll compromise because I know you really loved that boat.
Yeah, but we could have made that. The aft cabin was big enough. We could have modified that and made the bed in the center. It's just for some reason, I don't know why they want to design a couch, a wraparound couch in the main cabin in the back. I don't understand why they do that, because if I'm going to sit back on a couch on the boat, I'm not going to do it in the aft cabin. I don't need a sitting place to change, or I don't want that space wasted. I want the bed in the middle. I want a walk around bed, and I want storage compartments and all that. I don't need a couch in the bedroom. I don't know why, but would you want a couch in the bedroom?
No.
No. I don't know why they put them in there. I don't know if it's something that says,
if
hey,
we want to sit, we can sit down in bed.
Yeah, right. It's a beautiful boat. It's a beautiful design. It's an amazing boat. It's designed to cross oceans, and it's true that it will do that. But this one needs a lot of love and a lot of work to get it back there. If we were,
and a lot of patience.
Yeah. Now, if we were retired and we could travel to this location and work on it in the yard on site,
then maybe.
Yeah, it would work. But we're not retired. We still got, quite a few years ahead of us before we even get a chance to start our journey. So couldn't believe that we weren't gonna seal the deal and sign papers on this boat. So as we were preparing to leave the boat and end our review of this beautiful 1983 CT54, we decided to take a few more pictures of the external side of it, the hull, and just compare how big this thing really is. I'm standing under it. You can see it's just massive. The lines on this boat are awesome. Robert Perry did the designing on this boat, and he did a really outstanding job. I think this by far was probably his very best. But, some may differ, but we just really like this boat. I have a passion for it, and we hope someday we may come across a good deal on one, and maybe we have the time and the resources to be able to put it into bringing it back to its former glory again. But for this trip, we are going to have to say no to this one, and we will end up moving on, and we have several more boats to look at. So it wasn't a wasted trip. It was a valuable lesson learned. It was awesome to see this boat up close in person. And once again, whoever purchased the Wind Wanderer, we wish them the very best of luck with it, and we hope that it's back to its former glory by now. So we'll see. But like I said, if you're in the process of buying a boat, don't fall in love with those pictures online. They're very deceiving. Go see it firsthand, make sure everything matches up, and then fall in love after you buy it. But until then, we'll wrap this up, and from here, our journey homeward will take us to Ohio. So from here we travel from Trinidad, we travel all the way to Ohio, and we're going to go look at a Formosa 51 in Ohio. So stay tuned. We continue to review boats. We have several more to look at before we pick the one that we have today, and we'll continue to show these beautiful boats and tell the good and the bad and the ugly about what we saw on this journey to get us to ours. So thanks for watching. If you like what we're telling you and you're interested in following our story, please like and subscribe. Comment down below. What would you have thought? Would you have still bought the boat? Or would you have raised your bid enough to make sure you got it? Or would you have walked away like we did? It's a tough choice to make. It hurt. I wanted that boat really bad, but we couldn't do it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. See ya.
See you
later. Here's a few pictures of the Wind Wanderer back in her former glory days. She was sure a beautiful boat. Now there's a nice looking shell. I'd keep that one. let this play through, huh?
Welcome back to another episode of DIY Nautical Dream.
I'm Rich.
I'm Priscilla.
And together we make
DIY. Wow. What? You're choking your own?
No, I just thought it was funny. Okay,
Why?
just go ahead. Let's do it again.